Please welcome our panel, Unforeseen Challenges and Opportunities in Commercializing AI, with Alessandra Sala from Shutterstock, Josh Hollin with AMP Robotics, Shyam Rajagopalan with Infinitus Systems, and moderated by Jeff Mills from iMerit.
Hello, I'm Jeff Mills, Chief Revenue Officer here at iMerit, and I'm excited to welcome you all to our panel on unforeseen challenges and opportunities in commercializing AI. Today, I'm joined with three executives that have already navigated the R&D gauntlet and have taken AI into production and now even further into commercialization. We are joined today with Shutterstock, AMP Robotics, and Infinitus. Let's start today with Dr. Sala, Alessandra, who can give the audience today a quick high-level overview of what type of AI Shutterstock's been commercializing. And then can you give us a sense of some of the data operational challenges you faced along your journey?
Thank you, Jeff, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you today. So I'm Alessandra Sala. I'm a Senior Director of AI and Data Science at Shutterstock. My background, it comes from research, first in academia, then in industry. So I've seen the journey from developing those very seed, early stage ideas to bring to commercialization and into product. As you mentioned, in the journey, there are so many important challenges that we have to overcome when we bring an idea into reality and into the hands of so many customers around the world. One important thing that Shutterstock is paying specific attention to is the quality of the data and the diversity in the data. We source data set from 2 million contributors around the world, and we know that the visual system and the way we represent the images has been historically encoding all the human biases that we have around the world. So paying attention on how do we source data, the quality of data, how do we inspect those data as they come into our product, into our platform, and how those data and then become part of the AI journey to develop solutions that go back to the user everywhere in the world. It becomes a very interesting new journey with challenges and possibly new ideas coming up into our industry.
Josh, same for you. A brief overview of what you guys are doing to reimagine recycling, and maybe touch on some of the data operational challenges you faced in getting to commercialization.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for having us today. AMP Robotics is a bit of a unique solution space. We use a computer vision system to harvest recyclables out of the waste stream, which means we actually use the AI component as well as working with the robotics that does the actual picking or the harvesting that creates the value for our organization. Conversely, it also supports removing waste from the landfills, which is absolutely invaluable to the industry. We use our installed vision systems that are spread around the world to essentially not only improve our own model, but also actually use the identification ability to create new materials that we're able to harvest. So some of the challenges we faced, obviously, the material that we harvest is recyclable materials. This material could be in any shape or form when it's identified by the vision systems. It could be crushed, it could be torn, it could be shredded, it could be really, really dirty. So we have edge cases all over the place, which is one of the big challenges that we're constantly sort of innovating against. In addition to that, our images are constantly changing as new materials come into the waste stream, different packaging types. In consumer packaging, there might be a holiday season version of a product. All of those have to be captured by our AI system. In order to react to these, it really becomes efficient that we have the ability in a true data engine to improve our data models. We've built that world-class data engine that has a highly efficient cycle speed, allows us to get a lot of data development for each cycle, as well as high impact, where we get more results per cycle that we are hoping to achieve to improve the data model.
That's awesome. Shyam, for an earlier stage company, Infinitus seems to have a very mature product focus. It's one of the things I've really been impressed and really been blown away with how quickly Infinitus has moved from R&D and testing to real scale deployment with mature customers in such a sensitive space. Can you share a bit of what you and your team have been doing and what you think the biggest challenges have been to overcome for you guys to get to the commercialization point?
Definitely. Thanks, Jeff. Super excited to be here. So at Infinitus, we've created a digital assistant that automates a lot of the phone calls in the US healthcare system. So there's 1 billion plus phone calls every year that happen in the US healthcare system between businesses to exchange data, and adds to a large administrative burden for the cost. So we create conversational AI systems that can automate these phone calls. And where we really excel is challenging long multi-turn conversations, right? So when you look at something like Alexa, you're mostly interacting with it one turn at a time. But the types of phone calls we're doing are hundreds of turns, tens of minutes long. So when you think about commercializing something like that, the amount of data you need to really train those models is really large. So you not only need data to kind of be able to answer each of these questions, but data to kind of help the machine learning models maintain context across tens of minutes, right? So to do that are really a lot of data is needed, but also efficient data labeling techniques, efficient data engineering pipelines. Some of the things that Josh was talking about where there are all these different use cases, right? So how ophthalmologists ask certain questions might be different from oncologists. So we need to be able to collect large amounts of training data across all of these different use cases. And to do that, the one thing we realized is you need to own that stack end to end. So even though there's lots of data labeling tools out there, we've built our own end-to-end, own data engineering pipelines, own annotation tools. So being able to invest in that end-to-end allows us to really efficiently generate the large amount of data labels we need to train our ML models. For us, commercialization has been a lot about our pipelines on the labeling and on the engineering side. So.
This is so fascinating. If you take the 3 different areas you guys are in, right, Shyam, you're kind of talking about how do I get enough data within each of these different workflows to make that happen. You have Alessandra talking about, I have 2 million people who are sending me data. So I have tons of data. How do I make sure I don't have the bias that goes into that data? And then you have Josh kind of talking about the edge cases that pop out from having so much different data and use cases that you're looking at that you have to figure that out. I think that you guys talked a little bit about the data pipeline and the data engine. I'm going to go back to Alessandra. As you guys look at that kind of large amount of data that's coming through with some of that bias, what are you adding to that pipeline, to that engine to kind of sort through that? Is it human in the loop opportunities? Is it very, all automation? Is it edge case engines, kind of like what Josh was talking about? Give the audience maybe a sense of how that works for you guys.
Yeah, Jeff, thank you. That's a very rich question. And I'd like to go back to some of the things that Jeff has said to build on this question, talking about edge cases. If we take a step back, the world is not static. So when we develop computer vision product, an engine, and we train them on a static data set, at some point in real life, they will break. They will encounter something that they have never seen. Historically, the way we have been developing those systems is teaching them within specific categories. The world is much more diverse than a set of categories. If you think about open source solution, they go up to 100 categories. The best commercial system over there, they go to 1,000. If you look at Wikipedia, we have multi-million concept. So how do we bridge the gap between what those systems can do within categories versus what the world is? At Shutterstock, before COVID, we had never seen images of people with masks. Obviously, a new way of using the word mask and the concept mask with the COVID era. So the technology that we are using today, it's also evolving. So we're going from strong supervision to self-supervision so that those systems learn less within specific classes and blocks, but are more agile to learn from many examples. And going back to what you're asking now that we have this constant flow of new asset coming into our platform, how do we make sure it's diverse enough and doesn't bring the biases that we have? Can we do everything automatically? Not. We do have many systems that constantly inspect. But as Shutterstock, we also have a very strict human review process. All those assets that we bring into our catalog, they always go through some layer of human review to make sure that the quality is up to the standard of the brand and the platform that we provide. So going back and summarizing my answer, and possibly this is back to our panelist here, I will say is a multidimensional approach where the system has to come in place, the processes of inspecting the data and the outcome of the system. So there is not just one perfect recipe, but it's a multi-touching point process that we have to constantly update.
It's interesting too, Josh. I think for you, the kind of the issue is a little different, right? Bias is probably less of an issue for you because I'm assuming in the kind of recycling space, you're like the bias of plastic versus metal or something is probably not as controversial as it might be in other areas. But the edge cases probably do get like pretty enormous when you're talking about so many different types of items you could be looking at in so many different forms. I think it'd be interesting for the audience today to kind of hear a little bit more of how you've kind of conquered that issue.
Well, we have a certain inherent advantage at AMP in that we have hundreds of these devices deployed across MRFs, or material recovery facilities, that do recycling anywhere inside the United States, in Europe, and other locations as well. These vision systems that are deployed gives us a constant stream of new data. You could say an unlimited source of data because we're constantly making new trash. So our data teams have really focused around optimizing that data engine so that we can review, annotate, audit, and improve the model as quickly and efficiently as possible. The other thing that really becomes an advantage for us is the more different ways that we can look at the data, the more we can tap into different sensor data, different ways of looking at the same image and correlate those images together, the more we can improve the models as well by not just using one set of data stream. So there's lots of ways that we can constantly reinvent and constantly sort of challenge our own systems. And we do use human audit systems. That is a very important part of our process, but we're constantly looking at ways to improve that efficiency and drive that to go faster as well.
Shyam, I want to come back. So conversational AI, there's like so many problems that could be solved that you guys are going into. And I think, you know, if you listen to Josh, they're solving like a pretty specific problem. And so that puts them on a certain track. How important has Infinitus's decision to pick the right problem to solve first been to get you to the commercialization point?
Yeah, so Jeff, so conversational AI can be applied to any area, right? So almost anywhere where humans are exchanging data, not for kind of meaningful, dialogue or discourse, but really as an API. That's what Infinitus has chosen to go after. So, for example, like a doctor's office needs to know, is a patient approved for a treatment? Well, really, that should be an API long term. But today, because of how heterogeneous the system is, people are exchanging that data over a phone call instead, right? So the particular vertical that Infinitus went after is how do we actually get things that should be APIs, but people are chatting on the phone instead about, and move them over to APIs. So that's kind of our long-term vision. And I think a lot of our success has actually been because of that vision, right? Because what we do is, to our customers, we already expose an API. We say, hey, as a doctor's office, when you need to check whether a patient's approved, don't pick up the phone call, and we won't install the digital assistant at the doctor's office. The doctor's office will actually send us an API and say, hey, verify this patient request, and we'll actually give them back the data electronically. So But that's a pretty powerful paradigm shift because we move the conversational AI from the doctor's office side to internally and expose an API to them. And so that allows us to commercialize really quickly because in the future, we can still stick to our mission of reducing the administrative burden of healthcare. But suppose we can get the data electronically ourselves, then we can be a data warehouse layer and be that aggregator instead, right? So as a company, our mission is reduce the cost of the US healthcare system by taking all these administrative data tasks and really optimizing them. Today, handle conversational AI. Tomorrow, maybe statistical inference or other techniques, but give the API directly to the customer from day zero. And I think that product success comes from because we have that one particular focus area of taking on the tasks that shouldn't be conversations at all.
And I guess, in this panel specifically, one of the things about, moving to commercialization that I get excited about is that AI is kind of moved out of the lab and like out into the field. And is really interacting with customers at this point. So I'll stay with Shyam. As you guys deployed, really got into the customer space, how did that change the models and everything that you guys are kind of working on right now? Has there been a big shift for you as customers started to get involved? What kind of issues maybe came up once customers really started to interact with the systems that maybe changed kind of how you thought about it?
Yeah, so a few things. One is we sit with our customers very closely, right? So at the end of the day, our value is by providing value to our customers. So are we having the conversations the same way that our customers would have? And then are we replicating it? So we get two types of user feedback that I think are super helpful from a commercialization perspective, right? One is we sit with our customers and ask them, hey, is Eva, our digital assistant, having the conversation the same way you would? And that allows us to iterate and kind of get to a conclusion there. The second thing we do is at the end of every call, let's say we represent the doctor's office and we're calling an insurance company, we ask them, how was your experience chatting with Eva? And that's pretty fun because a few things. One, people give us pretty high survey response rates. You see very low rates in industry, but we get almost 100%. About 95% positive feedback, and the remaining 5% are really helpful for us to grow and improve our systems, right? So people say, hey, you could have done that part of the conversation a little bit better. And that's amazing feedback for us. So we also have a wealth of analytics and automated metrics that allow us to improve certain parts of the conversation. But real user feedback is amazing. And the fact that we've been able to get it outfitted into our system is super helpful. So I would encourage every practitioner of ML to not only have those automated metrics, but also have real user surveys, both of your existing customers as well as the folks interacting with your product, because that real user feedback, that qualitative feedback, and you have to marry that with the quantitative feedback to really improve your product. So Jeff, we rely a lot on user feedback and iterating using that. So.
Alessandra, I'll kind of give you the same question. I mean, Shutterstock obviously has tons and tons of users. So I'm sure that iterative feedback loop has just gotten exponentially bigger as you guys commercialize and got more of your AI out into the real world. How has that affected you guys and changed maybe your thoughts around your data pipelines?
So important, and what Shyam has just said, it resonated with me so much. But I have also a slightly different story that I want to throw at the audience here. So Shutterstock has 400 million images, which will take 11 years and a half of your time if you were spending 1 second on each single image. Wow. So obviously we deliver what you want in nanosecond, and therefore we need to use very sophisticated technology. And we have invented this way to provide customer something that is similar to what they have been selecting, just to grow your ability to see what we have in our catalogs that is similar to what you were searching. And then we have found that our customers started to respond to this functionality in a completely different way. It became a way to augment the way they express what they are looking for. So sometimes it's difficult to say, I want something like this image, but with another color, if you start to click and the system provides you alternatives which are similar but with small variation, then you can navigate and search and explore what you may want, or you may not even know, but you can navigate through those recommendations into area of our catalogs that you wouldn't have found in a different way. So user took a functionality and actually started to use in a slightly different way to expand even more just their simple ability to type keywords in a search bar. And now they use much more images into those search bar to look for other spaces in our catalogs that are similar to this one. So constantly looking, observing, as you said, Shyam, surveying customer, because they gave us so much nuances in how to bring those product idea into their next phase.
So I have a lot of questions coming in from the audience right now. One of them, Josh, was pretty specific to you. What will get easier, or what will you enable recycling facilities to do in the near term that they may not be able to do today? I don't think Alessandra or Shyam can answer that question as well as you can, Josh. So I think that one's for you.
We have the recycling industry cornered from this panel for sure. So I'll start with a couple of things. There's two parts. The first is, and this kind of also addresses the prior question, which is one of the things that really happened within AMP Robotics as we grew. We initially thought, just how do we pick this material? Now there's a real market for the data, what's in our waste stream. And as extended producer responsibility rules become much more enforced, people want to know how many of my particular type of packaging is being recycled and how much is actually going into landfills. That need for that data is really expanding, and that's one of the things that we look to enable customers to do more in the future. The second is really around our ability to gain perspective and get more use of the waste stream materials that are flowing through. So we want to use better imaging and better technologies to continue to expand our ability to provide our customer insights into what's there and harvest those materials effectively. We're even looking at different ways to use the AI algorithms to look at things that are non-traditional recyclables and how we can harvest those as well. We just announced a thin film recycling initiative and a product that can do that. So as we continue to grow and mature, we're not just looking at traditional sources of data, we're also looking at expanding our pipeline. So we're getting more and more broad in the type of categories and items we can harvest and recycle.
Another question that came in that I really want to hear Alessandra's response to is, what problem are you hoping AI will solve in the future? You being someone who's big in women in AI and so many other initiatives, I have a feeling you have some thoughts around initiatives that could be solved by AI in the future.
Yes, definitely. With some government and the women in AI community, we are working on how AI can help us to close the gender gap. In AI is fundamentally important because it's a technology that has the potential to discriminate and create better life outcome for those people that are involved into it. And therefore, having the diverse source of creators in this technology is particularly important. So instead of just using this technology to move into the future, how can we use this technology today to actually reach out to and solve a number of problems that today we have and are definitely worth our attention? So AI for good and AI for gender gap.
Shyam, I'm going to give you the same question. We're down to our last minute and a half. Any thoughts from you on problems you're hoping AI will solve in the future?
Yeah, so I've been in healthcare, so I'm pretty passionate about that. And so one of the cool things is how there's so many different healthcare AI companies out there at this point, right? So at Infinitus, we're working on the administrative burden and the back office tasks. But I see other companies there that are working on reducing the cost of drug discovery, right? When we get into these new medications, we see how expensive they can be. We see other companies that are focused on the clinical workflow. So I see all of these different healthcare companies working together to really democratize and reduce the cost of the US healthcare system. I think today, it's a significant percentage of the US GDP, something like 20% of the US GDP is actually dedicated to healthcare. And even with that, we see a large percentage of people not having good access to care. So I see all the different healthcare AI companies coming up, and also more ones in the future collaborating to really reduce the cost down and have everybody have access to care. So that would be a pretty exciting vision for me to see AI solve.
I couldn't agree more. Love this panel, love these answers. For everyone who attended today, Unforeseen Challenges and Opportunities in Commercializing AI. Now it's your turn to solve these problems as well. Thanks a lot for joining.